everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and today very excited to be kicking off a GameFound preview series here on the channel for Stalker the board game from Awaken Realms, which is landing on GameFound for June 13th. If you want to see the campaign page itself, I have a link in the pinned comment and video descriptions. You can stay on top of the news and updates in the campaign itself when it does launch, as this video will be going out before the campaign begins. Now, if you haven't checked out my prototype unboxing where I went through all the game components and everything received from Awaken Realms, I'll put a link to that in the top right hand corner. Also, inside of that video, you'll have noted that I did not open up mission box number 1 or mission box number 2, so you guys don't know what's inside of those. But what we will be doing inside this video is digging into this box, and we'll at least be seeing some of the contents inside, as some of it will be left towards the end of the mission. So let's go ahead, we're going to dig inside mission number 1, get it set up to the table. But before we do that, we'll go ahead and focus on the typical game components you're going to need around the table in order to play Stalker the board game. We'll start off with the action tokens, which you'll be using quite a bit as you move through Stalker. You have the short actions here as well as the long actions in the very back. We also have some unknown tokens, which you'll see during setup. They get set up around the game board and they scale dependent on the number of players. The next 3 token types we have are loot tokens, going to want to find those, Overwatch tokens, and pin down tokens. And just like the Stalker video game, noise does matter. So we have yellow noise tokens and red noise tokens, as well as a pile of universal tokens we'll be using throughout the game. We now have some card decks to go through. We have a weapon deck, wound deck, item deck, armor deck, and artifact deck. We have a couple of reference cards, one specific to the enemy turn, the AI activation, and then we have the anomaly card as well. You'll see the anomaly bag to the right. Those are all the anomaly-based tokens that go inside the bag. You'll see on the reference card how many of each different type by color are inside the bag. I've also placed all the enemy miniatures that come as part of the prototype, and it's pretty certain that there'll likely be many more beyond this in the final version of the game. Also, we have anomalies there on the right, but let's go through these starting left to right. First one there is the Pseudo Giant. It's one of the rarest and most fearsome mutants in the zone. It's developed incredible strength, inhuman resilience, and a grotesque form which heavily deviates from human-based mutations. So this thing is essentially a mix of animal and human combined. Pretty insane. Now, to the right of the Pseudo Giant, we have 6 Snorks. These are one of the most recognizable mutants in the whole Stalker series. These are thought to be individuals, broken-minded soldiers, left to guard the zone. These Snorks are recognized by their loud grunting they constantly produce, and on some occasions, Snorks have also been seen talking to each other, although the language they use is barely recognizable. Next up, we have 2 columns of bandits. The one on the left-hand side are holding AK-74s. The one on the right side are holding shotguns, and regardless of what they're carrying for weapons, bandits are a group of mostly ex-criminals who came into the zone either to escape from the law, trade weapons, or make money. They're ruthless, and they generally are hostile to anyone not in their affiliated gang. And last but not least, we have a column of anomalies on the far right. Each and every one of these has different effects upon the player. We'll be using the anomaly bag to determine what type of anomaly it is and what kind of effects it may have. Almost all of them are dangerous and eventually fatal. Now, what makes anomalies attractive or intriguing to stalkers is that artifacts are formed in anomalies, and those are something that stalkers want to obtain. It's worth mentioning, when you obtain an artifact, there is potential, usually high potential, that radiation is a part of the equation. Now let's set up some dice. We have a directional die that also glows in the dark. Next, we have a white wound die. I'll show you the different sides of this one. A couple blank sides, a couple with single slashes, and then a double slash. And then here we have 5 red dice and 5 blue dice. I'm showing all unique sides. Both of these types of dice have 2 sides with a single star on them. And last but not least, we have a number of reference cards that relate to the enemies as well as the stalkers we can choose between, plus the miniatures for each of them. At this point, you're going to want to have the mission you're about to go on nearby, but the thing to focus on is the stalker's memento here. We're going to open up this book, which is going to give us narration around what's leading into our mission. So without further ado, let's dig in.
Part 1. Rescuing Dalik. What? You want me to tell you a story tonight? I sigh and toss a log on the fire. My signet glints as the flames flare, the symbol perfectly visible. I see it attracts everybody's attention. Again. A pretty old-fashioned thing, this signet. A good knuckle duster, though. No wonder it draws attention. Everybody thinks there is a story behind it. Well, there is one. I can tell you about this thing. I show them the signet. Why not, I think. It's been years, after all. Perhaps someone around the fire has seen the symbol on it. Perhaps I will somehow get closer to its secret. So, one night I'm trudging through some swamps, God knows where. My shoes are wet, mosquito bites itch like hell, and my patience is running thin. The normalies flicker all around. Nasty place. Suddenly, a huge structure emerges from the dark. A warehouse, probably. I have never seen it, and I feel chills running down my back because it means I got lost. Anyway, I crawl up to feel things out when a mighty roar shatters the air, and the ground begins to tremble. A huge, violent mutant brute emerges out of nowhere to charge. There is no time to open fire. I run like crazy, the thing still after me. I could practically smell its fetid breath. And then this fellow appears, waving and yelling something about a bunker. I have no choice but to follow. The hatch of the bunker closes with an echoing thud. I sit down in the wet dark, trying to catch my breath, and listen for a while to the brute hammering at the hatch. Thank you, I manage, looking at my savior. Don't mention it, the stranger says with an accent I cannot place. It is the zone. We need to help each other out, huh? The beast finally gets bored, and silence falls, deep and intoxicating. My savior turns on a battered flashlight, and I can finally see him well. A tall, middle-aged man with a hardened face and close-cropped hair, wearing a signet with a weird symbol. He introduces himself as Professor Yeshov. Aren't you a bit too young for a professor? I ask suspiciously. And Yeshov bursts out laughing. Ha! You clearly underestimate my thirst for knowledge, he says, which in fact has brought me here to broaden the horizons of future science. I am lucky I found such a safe haven here because my search focuses on a nearby location. That warehouse, specifically. Lucky? Well, I know well enough that it takes more than just luck to find such a bunker. But I say nothing, because Yeshov begins talking about the warehouse I saw, and I learn that it hides a really valuable object, the grail of his science, whatever that is. Soon, it turns out that the roaring brute isn't the only obstacle between Yeshov and the artifact. There is also a gang who call themselves the Turbos, willing to sack the warehouse any minute, and they do have the means to eliminate the brute, which, as the prof explains, is a pseudo-giant. Right, a pseudo-giant, 2.5 meters of muscle, claws, tendons, and mindless fury. The top of the local food chain, which likely won't even notice the bullets bouncing off of it. Thank you. I pass. I'm about to put the cigarette out and get out of there when the prof suddenly offers me money to help him get the object. His financial offer is stunning, totally stunning. Aren't you too loaded for an egghead? I ask, and the prof shrugs his shoulders. Do you take the job or not? he asks. I eye him in disbelief, and suddenly realize that I am ready to take the challenge, risk or not. The prof hasn't finished yet, though. There is more to the deal. He tells me the story of yet another crew who previously occupied the warehouse. Yeshov managed to bribe one guard called Dalik to let him into the compartment with that scientific object. But then the pseudo-giant appeared and literally smeared the walls with the bodies of those poor wretches. Dalik, fortunately, was the only one who escaped the carnage. Unfortunately, Dalik ran out of luck soon enough and got caught by the turbos. He is the only person who knows how to get into the warehouse without attracting the pseudo-giant's attention, Yeshov adds. And those gangsters are currently trying to pry the intel out of him in their camp. The truth sinks in. My job begins with releasing Dalik from the gangsters. I sit back and touch the damp wall of the bunker. Suddenly, the payment doesn't seem high enough, and Yeshov is quick enough to realize it. The cunning fox shows me the first installment of the payment, which makes my doubts vanish. We begin to plan the rescue operation.
Now, with a much better understanding of the backstory for mission number 1, we take a flip through the Memento book to the next page where it talks about what we need to set up going into mission number 1. It's telling us we need to choose our stalker and pull out related components. At this point, each player is going to take one of the Geiger counters, which I have here, making sure it's set to 1.0, and we're now going to choose between the stalkers available as part of the prototype. We have 3 to choose from with different varying types. We have a guide, assault, and a sniper. Now you'll notice based on the symbols on the cards, each one of these has some unique abilities depending on whether you're using short actions, which have the icon right there next to the move, or you go for long actions, which typically has to do with one of the better things that that particular type of stalker can pull off, and then you have some more short actions along the bottom as well. Plus, each of them have a passive ability that makes them unique across the board on top of any variations between the other 3 you can see up here. And you'll notice there's differences in terms of what type of noise is being used and how much type of noise, or even on the movement front where the sniper can move up to 3 spaces when doing a long action sprint, which is pretty handy, whereas the guide can only go 2, and here with the assault individual only 1. So there are differences between them, so depending on how you want to strategize things, you're going to want to pick one that maybe suits the style of play you're going after. For me personally, I kind of like the blend of the 2. We have assault and sniper as kind of the 2 ends of the spectrum, so I'm looking at the guide as being the one I want to pick for true solo. Now we grab a player dashboard, which is known in Stalker as your PDA. You'll notice on the back of the card that we just chose when selecting our characters, it goes through the different tokens that you have available. So a long action token and 2 short action tokens is what you'll have, and then it has some backstory on the individual as well. So I've gone ahead and placed all the action tokens in the recessed area marked action tokens. You'll see all these areas are actually recessed, keeping everything nice and in place for the duration of your play. On the right-hand side, you'll see a color on the dashboard that will change depending on which PDA you choose. I have the green one here, so we're going to find the green player base, which we're going to attach to the bottom of the miniature that matches the one I've chosen. At this point in time, we're going to take a look inside the mission box number 1 called Rescuing Dalik, and we're going to be looking for a personal item, which is directly related to the stalker that I've chosen. There is one for each of the stalkers, and they're unique. And then there's a number of other items in there as well. We'll be focusing on these to start, but there's other components inside this mission box. Just to give you an idea as to what comes inside mission box number 1, we have a sticker sheet, which will certainly be tied to the map underneath. We then have this page here, which is all around the setup of this mission. It's for Campaign 01, Mission 01, Rescuing Dalik. And we have a weapon deck, environment card deck, and an item deck over here. Now, digging through that item deck, you'll find the 3 personal items I was talking about, one relating to each of the stalkers that I could choose from in the prototype. Again, the name of the stalker right underneath the title, so we know Adrenaline Shot's the one I'm going to be gaining. These 2 are out of play. I have a whole bunch of other items we'll talk about in a second, but wanted to draw your attention to the fact that there were some armor cards at the bottom of this deck as well. They're all exactly the same, but I'll be taking one of them. At most, a Stalker should have 5 items, 1 weapon, and 1 armor. So we've already covered the armor, leather jacket, it's slotted in down here in the bottom left. In terms of items, we've already got 1 personal item, so that takes up 1 of the 5 we can have. You'll also note that items can be slotted in the inventory. There's 3 slots here, and the rest can go in the backpack. It's worth mentioning that the positioning of where your items are does matter. If they're in your backpack, they're considered unavailable. You cannot use any abilities on the cards. If they're in your inventory slots, you can. For now, as we're still picking item cards, and I can have up to 5 on my Stalker, which I'll gather first and then determine how I want to disperse them across the slots and the backpack. Although even more important than item cards, we need to choose a weapon. So taking a look at the weapon cards available from the mission box only, not the weapon cards that we set up earlier in the video, as those are just part of a deck which we might encounter in the future. They're not part of the loadout we get to select from right now. These are the 4 we have to pick from, and seeing as I'm looking for a weapon that's going to be a nice hybrid of things, seeing as I'm going for a stealth-based approach, but want to be ready in case things go sideways, I think the MP5 is the best bet. The MP5 has been slotted in as my weapon. You'll notice the ammo type is pistol, so if we want any additional ammo for this gun, that's the type of ammo we want to go after. You'll also notice it says 6, and right off the bat, when you're going into a mission, your gun is considered fully loaded, so we're going to put 6 universal markers right on the card itself. So now let's go ahead and gather up to 5 total items to load out our Stalker. We have the adrenaline shot already, so that's 1. We need 4 more. Now I was taking a look through all these, and they all have varying abilities and differences, but the one up here, bolts and nuts, if you're familiar with the video game, you have an unlimited amount of these in the video game anyway. Not so much in this case, as you have 3 charges, but you basically throw these things at anomalies, and it allows you to essentially decipher or investigate anomalies to see how they'll react to the bolts. They can also essentially stop the anomalies from having a negative effect, maybe long enough for you to move past them, or they can just essentially be there to determine, what type of anomaly it is so that you don't do something silly and get yourself harmed. But those kind of things can be handy. However, my guide, my Stalker, has a passive ability at the bottom of his card that says when you draw an anomaly token, draw 1 additional token, take 1, and put the other back into the anomaly bag. So in other words, he's already very good at determining anomaly types. So a nuts and bolts supply card or item card isn't probably the best option for him per se. It's not the worst, but it's probably not the best. There's other things in here I might want to go after, basically being that I want to be more strategically stealthy through the mission than anything else. So let's focus on that. So in this situation, I think I'm going to go with a decoy card. We're going to go with a flashbang. We're going to get some pistol ammo in case things go south. And we're also going to grab a smoke grenade as well. So here is my loadout for my Stalker Borsuk, which has now been completed. He has 5 items. I chose the decoy, smoke grenade, and adrenaline shot in the inventory slots. I have a flashbang and pistol ammo in my backpack. The main reason I'm putting the pistol ammo in the backpack is, well, I don't need to reload anything because I'm going into this mission with 6 ammo. If I really get into a situation where the stealth element goes sideways on me and I'm not able to continue that way, then I'll have the ammo as a backup, as things will likely get a lot more stressful. Now, just before we move on, I want to talk about 2 things that you might be wondering about. One is, you'll remember earlier in the video, I set up a weapon deck and an item deck way up top. Why didn't we touch those cards? Why didn't we merge them in with what we got from mission box number 1? Well, it's because those cards are going to be cards specific to the zone that we may find while we're out there. We might find weapons, we might find items, very much like when you're playing the video game of Stalker. The second thing I want to mention is around the binder. You saw the binder that I showed you in the prototype unboxing. Inside of it, very much like ISS Vanguard, has nice organization, keeps things categorized, so you can quickly go through the cards when there's a number of them to find the ones you're looking for. And that's exactly what the Stalker binder is going to be used for, at least in part, as it's going to be aiming at the end of a mission. So for example, the end of this very first mission, in the final version, you'll take cards that are yours. You're going to slot them into the binder so that when you go to make your loadout for the next mission, you basically have all of the item cards at your disposal, all the weapon cards at your disposal in front of you, so you can make decisions without having to lay these cards out all over the game table. You can quickly go through the binder, select the things you want, pull them out, and get going. It'll make organization and also speed up the setup times dramatically. Now, something else to know about the decks way up at the top of the game board set up earlier is that the item deck is known as the loot deck. When you loot within the game, you go to the item deck to find something. So that ties into what I want to talk about next, which is whatever came out of the Mission 1 box that you did not have go to a Stalker character, which is a very small amount of cards you can see there in front, they're going to be shuffled into that loot deck to make that loot deck even more exciting going forward. And you may have noticed that both of those decks actually had a different color back. Again, this is a prototype. In the final version, that will not be a concern. The final thing to do around cards from the mission box is I have 2 leftover armor cards because I'm only controlling 1 Stalker, which used 1 of the 3 armors. So these 2 will just go on top of the armor deck. It does not matter what order this deck is in at all. You don't even have to shuffle it. The only one that's going to be actually used during gameplay for loot is the item deck. Now we open up the mission pamphlet inside of the mission box and it tells us map setup is next. It tells us exactly what numbered tiles to place and in what orientation. We also need the map compass, which we'll grab and place as depicted. We have the anomaly stuff already set up and ready to go. Here's a look at the mission map all laid out. We're now going to focus on the environment cards, that deck in the bottom left-hand corner. We're going to take cards E01A through to E07A. We're not going to look at these cards. We'll keep them face down, and based on their numbers, based on the pamphlet, they go in designated spaces. Let's place them right now. The environment cards have now been overlaid on top of the map tiles, which is given additional instructions as well as actions that are possible at certain areas. Now we place objective E21A and exploration card E09A next to the game board. Now we grab environment card E08A. We're going to resolve it. It says springboard anomaly. Place the indicated anomaly on the map as shown on the setup sheet. Whenever any model enters space with the springboard anomaly, you're going to flip this card and consult the anomaly card. The springboard anomaly is said to be placed very close to the top right-hand corner of the game board. Now the slot that it was referring to for the anomaly card is right on the reference card itself. You'll see it here, anomaly slot. So we're just going to go ahead and place it in like that. Now from the enemy deck, we're taking the Bandit Shotgun and the Bandit AK-74 and placing them near the game board as a reference. Now we're going to go ahead and set up our unknown tokens. Very easy to do when playing true solo for this mission. It's 0, 0, 1, 1. We have a 0 here, but we need to get 2 1s, and we have 3 1s to choose between. So we're going to have to randomly select them. We'll flip them over, shuffle them up. I'll grab 2 at random. This one will not be a part of the equation when we're playing solo, true solo, so we'll go back to the tray. We'll go ahead, shuffle these up, grab 2. And just like that, I've gone ahead, selected 2, removed 1. I'm not going to look at it, don't want to know what it is. And we're going to go ahead and flip these zeros over. That'll make our 4 tokens. We'll now randomly mix them together again, and we're going to place them on the game board. And just like that, all the unknown tokens have been placed out on the game board. We still need to place miniatures, Overwatch tokens, and loot tokens. The bandits are all around the mission now. We have 2 bandits with the AK-74s right here, and then 3 bandits with the shotgun. All of them have Overwatch tokens, and it does matter which direction they're facing. The mission has 3 loot tokens. Looks like this one is the easiest one to get, as the other 2 are more central and right in the midst of a whole bunch of bandits. Final components to set up, one being the compass in the orientation as directed in the mission setup. You also have a reference card for icons here. It is double-sided, and a game round order card as well.
Rescuing Dalik. I am standing there in the twilight forest, clenching my teeth. The cold of the morning is seeping in. The mission is simple. Sneak into the camp, find Dalik, free him, and get the hell out of there. I need to be as quiet as the night. But if any of those thugs spot me, I will give them hell. And snorks, I reminded myself. There might be snorks around. I touched the trigger of my gun to reassure myself and take the first step. There is no return now.
And that, my friends, is going to wrap up the how to play video for Stalker the board game from Awaken Realms. I really hope this helps you make an informed decision on the game, and stay tuned for more on the channel as we dive into mission number 1 together to see whether our Stalker is going to be successful at mission number 1. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of what you saw to this point. And if you haven't joined us on the Rolling Solo Facebook group or Discord, join us in either of those spots to have more discussions around this one as we go forward. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.